Good evening, everybody. Here we are heading into past the halfway point of the semester, and we're getting into the next half of it. Basically, I'm going to be covering tonight a lot of oddball little things, so be prepared to shift gears quite a bit. I'm going to talk about Photoshop and alpha channels. I'm going to go back over the puppet tool, which I briefly mentioned last week, and depending upon the time, we'll have more. Plus, we'll be talking about projects number 4. If you recall, the Jazz Festival is due this evening. Technically speaking, it's due in about 20 minutes. Okay, I'll give everybody a minute to go ahead and download those files before I continue with the class. I'm also going to, because I'm using a different microphone, close the doors and stuff in my office. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to get ready here. All right. Once again, everybody yell in the chat, here, yes, whatever, and we will get going. Very good. Okay, you guys got this information. That's good to know. Okay, we are going to sort of shift gears here and leave After Effects for just a moment. Last week you saw me prepare files for the House at Night sequence. And one of the things I want to do is talk a little bit about Photoshop and stuff. And this is going to be a really brief overview. Concerning Photoshop was a prerequisite for this class. And if I recall correctly, when I asked you guys to raise your hands, you all did. So, one of the things about Photoshop is when you make a new file, you of course get the default information, okay, which is any size, any shape, etc. Now, you can make your life a lot easier if you prepare your files before you start using After Effects. What I recommend, depending upon what your needs are, of course, is there are different types of sizes that you can create. And by default, it also has one set for film and video. Notice that they have these presets and, of course, a button here, which is View All Presets. These are all the standard video sizes already built in to the system, including we have the NTCS that we've been using, NTCS1, NTCS2, etc. This list here matches our After Effects when we go Composition, New Composition. Remember this drop down? Yep, they match each other. So if you were to prepare your files in Photoshop, you could save yourself a lot of time and energy. Now, sticking with the exact same size does not always mean the right thing to do. For example, if you have a photograph that you're planning on zooming in onto a lot, you don't want it the standard size. You want it to be much more higher resolution than that to take the zoom in and motion. Okay, most video, believe it or not, on your TV set, despite what it says, has a resolution of 72 pixels per inch. Okay, what they do instead is they cram more pixels into that space. So that's why they call this high def and stuff. Those NCSS. See, much fewer pixels, etc. So prepping your stuff is very important. Now, I've already opened up this AK Lodge number 1, which has this wonderful little giraffe in here. Now, let me ask you guys a question, and you can answer in the chat. Did any of your classes cover alpha channels when you're doing a Photoshop class? I'm seeing a lot of no's. Yes, but I forgot how they work. Okay, fair enough. They were mentioned very briefly. Yeah, this is one of those bizarre things. I've talked to teachers and I've said, do you cover alpha channels? And they sit there and look at me like I'm absolutely crazy. They go, well, no, that's too complicated. That's like, insane talking, that kind of thing. I'm like, really? Sigh. I don't think so. Now I'm going to move my screen around here for a little bit. There's my layers palette. Now, as we know with Photoshop files, these are all 2D. There are pixels going right, left, pixels going up, down, but there's absolutely no depth, right? Well, the thing about it, the way we fake this out is we make new layers, of course. And even though we make multiple layers, which we can then draw on, there's my drawing on, and that's on layer number 1, it has no impact on that. But even when we have multiple layers and stuff, there is, it still like basically flattens, or it looks like it's a flattened image if we keep all of the various layers. So where do channels come from? Well, son of a gun, I happen to have a PowerPoint slide. Oops, wrong button, PowerPoint. Okay. Let's see, I made this a year ago, so I'll see how much I remember off the top of my head. Alpha channels. Basically, when we look at the color pickers, we will notice that the colors are separated. Immediately to the right-hand side here, we have hue, saturation, brightness, then we have the color breakdowns of RGB, red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, and all the other variations of this. So this particular color that's chosen, in that part of the color word there, is made up of these 3 colors. So when I look at any pixel in here, so if I select a pixel, eyedropper, bring me a match. And I keep moving these bloody things around. There's the eyedropper. When I select that color right there, that's made up of various pixels, which everyone always goes, yeah, that makes sense, Eric, hopefully. Okay. So again, when we pick one pixel, we get this mixture of that. That makes up the color. Have you ever thought about where that information is actually stored inside of the computer system? Well, basically, this information is stored for that particular pixel, and all other pixels is stored in what we call the channels, or the alpha channels. That's located, and this is a really old version of Photoshop, as you can tell, is besides layers, we also have an area called channels. There we go. There are the channels. This is where that breakdown of information, and it's separated out. So the information for the red is stored here, the green here, blue there, and then they're merged together in this upper one. This is the actual flattened image, or I should say, is the RGB channel. As you can see. So all the red pixel information goes there. Red, green, blue. If you're doing printing, it'd be cyan, magenta, yellow. Yeah. The weird thing about this is everything is black and white. It's just the way the computer memorizes things. Because what it does is it sits there, and like on this top one, it says each pixel has so much percentage blue, and there is no other information. Hence, it looks like this black and white photograph. Green is stored this way, red is stored this way. It's not until you put them together do you get the information of the RGB or whatever combination that you have. Now, just for your information, why we call them alpha channels, because way back in the beginning of digital, somebody very smartly said, hey, you know what? We could actually store more information in this area than just the red, green, blue information. So all extra information is referred to as an alpha channel. And the way Photoshop does it is alpha channel 1, alpha channel 2, alpha channel 3. It's not alpha, beta, gamma, okay? It just is. However, there's a caveat on this. Even though we can have multiple alpha channels in Photoshop, After Effects and digital videos only want one alpha channel. They will only recognize one alpha channel, okay? So if I had multiple alpha channels inside of a Photoshop file, imported it, it would freak After Effects out because it wouldn't know which one to use. What we do with video, though, is we store this information what we store in alpha is how to do a transparencies, what the computer sees and doesn't see, or makes transparent, doesn't make transparent. This reddish green, reddish pinky color is a marker saying these pixels will be transparent and the others will not. If you look at the little thumbnail, you can see that's marked, like, looks like it's knocked out. Now we're getting into trivia here. The reason why the default is the salmon color, but you can change it to anything you want, is way back in the days of digital printing, the they had this stuff on the printers called ribbolith, which would block out areas to ensure that no ink would go onto the page in those areas. And it was that color, so they translated it in. Also, when we do real color separations, that's what these things are. Technically speaking, these are traditional color separations. So we can use all the Photoshop tools that we want to adjust this alpha channel. Black is transparent and white is solid. Okay, that's the way it thinks. So everything is black. When we get into After Effects, will be totally transparent, and the white will be seen by the audience where the photograph is. The other thing is, when you save this, you must save the alpha channel itself. You can save it as a PSD, or you can save it as a TIFF. There's a few other formats, but those are the main ones that will retain an alpha channel. Okay, but JPEGs and PNGs really don't do alpha channels very well. Okay, and that was my quickie. I'll have that up on the website, by the way, for you guys to download.
We're talking about saving from Photoshop, right?
Absolutely. We're talking about Photoshop right at this point. So, for example, if I go to channels here, I can see my giraffe with the mixture of the RGB. But this is what the red information looks like. This is what the green information looks like, and this is what the blue information looks like. Now, I want you to pay attention and maybe even take some notes at this point, because everybody, I don't know why so many people make a big deal about making alpha channels, okay, because it's not that big of a deal. I will show you the fewest keystrokes on the planet to make an alpha channel. First thing I'm going to do is just do a simple selection. I'm going to select a rectangle, like so. You can see the little marquee going around. I just realized. Oops, no, I did not say that. Sorry. That's what I wanted. Okay. The reason why I wanted that was I wanted to be able to zoom in over here. I know it's the far left-hand side, sorry about that. But you see this little symbol below the color picker? The little square with the little dot 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 circle? Okay, that tool is referred to as the Quick Mask Mode button. Yeah, that's a mouthful. But if you select it when you're in the channel's information, bang, it makes a quick mask. And as you can see, everything that was selected is now been shown to be transparent. Everything that was outside the selection is now blacked out. The reason we use the alpha channels in video is it gives us the most crisp and clean transparencies on the planet. Much crisper and cleaner than many other formats. Also, understanding this will help you when we get into other tools down the road over the next couple weeks with After Effects. Understanding that After Effects is doing this for you a lot of the times, but we can do it manually. So now that I've got an alpha channel, I'm going to do a save as. So I'm saving this document, and I'm going to call it with alpha. So it's my AH log JPEG, right? It's no longer JPEG. With alpha. Save as PSD. Hit save. Yeah. when I go into After Effects, if I grab the original file, you can see, yep, it's not transparent. All the pixels are there. However, if I go back now and go File, Import, File, I'm still in my house at night. And of course, I cannot find what I'm looking for. Good grief. Where did I save that? Yeah. Oh, I put it in the root. Of course I did. There it is. Tell it to import that. And I want it as footage, not as a and it screwed up. Of course it did. I run into this from time to time inside of Photoshop. Save as. Yeah, really. Sometimes if you just save it as a TIFF,
Good question.
yeah, go for it.
What's special about a TIFF? Like, I know that PNGs can do transparent backgrounds and JPEGs can't, but like, what's a TIFF's deal, I guess?
TIFF is a really old format. It's been around for like ever. Now there it is. See what it's asking me. So basically, it's like the universal format. Any piece of software will use it. Long before PNGs and stuff. And now when I scale this, you can see that.
TIFFs
What?
can't be like videos though, right?
No, a TIFF is literally a still image. Just as a PNG is, just as a JPEG is. Now the reason why I'm showing this is,
And do TIFFs do transparent backgrounds?
yes, you just witnessed me doing that. PNGs have issues with transparent backgrounds. Now here's the neat thing about what I just did. You can see that my giraffe is cut off. By reading the alpha channel, the computer has immediately cropped this based on this Photoshop file, my new TIFF file. I'll have to look into it. But the thing is, here's the thing that people don't know, is you can still use all your Photoshop tools on the left-hand side inside the channel information. Now what I'm showing you is only a small fraction of channels. Channels are actually very, very powerful. This is the underlining information underneath the hood. Have you ever heard the term RAW when it comes to digital videos and stuff? Well, RAW is when it saves all the information from your digital camera. Well, this is where a lot of that information resides. For example, if I were to choose the paintbrush again, now I'm still in black and white. Basically, remember this quick thumbnail here? If I were to, let's get a bigger brush first and foremost. That's a little bit too small. There we go. Okay. So if everything that's white is visible to the computer, and everything that's black, I'm literally painting with black and white here to hide and remove information. So I've just made a change to this file. I tell the computer to save it. And I'm going to flip over to my alpha. Whoa, look at that. Now you can see the head, now you can see the feet, just like I did in my Photoshop file. Now, why that works is, let me explain real fast. This is a little deviation from Photoshop portion of the class. But if you recall, way back in the beginning of the semester, before we went to staying at home, I told you that when you went File, Import, that this was a total lie. It really doesn't import anything, right? It's making shortcuts. These are all shortcuts pointed to my hard drive where this original file is. That means that if I make any changes whatsoever to this file, oops, and I can make as many changes as I want. I can make a change to his gut there. And the moment I hit save and save that original file, After Effects grabs the original file and updates me. This is how we can work with Illustrator, Photoshop, Premiere, After Effects, audio, you name it. Because it doesn't really import anything, we can make changes on the fly and have multiple files. As long as you hit save, and some of the software will want you to hit update and stuff, you can keep making changes to the original. You know, this means that you no longer have to save After Effects, quit out of it, go to Photoshop, make all your fixes, come back. If your computer is powerful enough, you can do both. Okay, we've got several questions going on here, so let me stop and go over them. Yeah, when I change the original file, sometimes it reflects After Effects, but sometimes it doesn't work. Basically, sometimes it depends upon whether or not you've saved the work. Because when you're inside Photoshop, all the changes I make are literally in memory. Hence, it's not updated. I have to do a physical hard save that work for it to translate the information. Okay. So, and also I'll be honest with you, sometimes it doesn't work for me either, and I have to kick the darn thing in the sense that I go back and save it. You saw how I tried importing the Photoshop file and I didn't get the alpha channel. It's really irritating. It happens every so often. And I'm never sure whether it's my computer or a bug in the system. But, you know, it's, again, remember, the important part of this is why you don't really import anything. You actually are just doing things. The other thing to keep in mind is that the channels are the underlying part of the structure. No matter how many layers you want, this is the flattened information. Okay, so I can go in and add more layers to this. Let's put something red or purple in here. Just give me a brush, any brush, there we go. So I'm going to brush something on here. Go back to my channels, where that information is on the RGB screen, and it certainly is on the red channel. A little bit of green. Actually, it's minus because there is no green information there. Remember, that's black is transparent. And I did that outside of the mask there. So let me go back to my layers, and I'm going to put, still reflecting that now. No, I don't want layer styles. Thank you. I'm going to put a red line right through him, right there. So it's on layer 1. It's not part of the original file. But yet, it's going to be part of the alpha channel. So if I hit File, Save, there's my red line. Okay, so do not confuse layers with channels. Channels are flattened layers, is the easiest way I can think of. Like adding a layer to the original file doesn't reflect in After Effects. Well, as you can see, yes it did. I did add a new layer to the Photoshop file, hit save, and it did show up in After Effects. Now the other thing that you might want to keep in mind in this is, now I'm going to delete that layer. No, don't do that. Got to deal with the sensitivity of the computer. Delete that layer, yes please. Okay, I'm back in channels. Now here's the interesting thing as well. is you've heard me describe that quick mask is actually painting in black and white, transparency versus non-transparent. What do you think if there was a shade of gray in there? What do you think is going to happen? Well, if I put a shade of gray in here, it's half black, half white. So when I hit save, go back to my After Effects, you can see I get a shade of gray there. And if I put another photograph in there, you can see there's a little translucency. This is actually the beginning of opacity when you start using shades of gray. Don't think it's not opacity, okay, but it is there. But you can see how you can see through this, while you cannot see through this particular giraffe himself. As a matter of fact, if I behind the other, right, they're hiding each other. Never mind. Do that. So I could actually animate my guy through the whole park here. Etc. So in Photoshop, using a shade of gray as opposed to just solid black and white allows me to, create some really, if I was doing ghost-like things, etc., I might be very tempted to use shades of gray. You can really get some nice effects. Also for misting and fog effects, it's very, very powerful. Now let me throw this out as a question. Is you often see people go into their layers, grab their eraser, and start erasing pixels to make a transparency. Why is that normally a bad idea? Not always 100% of the time, but why? Anybody? Very good. Two good answers, Jimmy, Terry. Yeah, because basically that's known as destructive. Okay? Meaning that the pixels are literally deleted from the image. And people go, but Eric, I can undo it. Yeah, but no, not after you've saved it a few times. The information's gone. The really neat thing about doing this alpha channel method is it's completely non-destructive. I can come back in here again and again and again, change things. I can chop off this giraffe's head by using this method. Hit save. So hide that guy. Oops, I hit the wrong one. There's his head. It's gone. And I go, whoops, wrong thing. Okay, let's go back and fix it. This is one of the most forgiving methods of making a transparency on the planet. You can always go back and fix any little details that you have and make things work. And with your Photoshop files, and if you really know your Photoshop skills, I mean, you can get down in here and select every clean up every pixels and stuff. Right now, I'm just doing something sloppy, mainly as a demonstration to show it more dramatically on here and stuff. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is the only way to do this. I'm just letting you know that it does exist and it's important. So bottom line is, your alpha channel, be it in Photoshop or other things, just Photoshop demonstrates this so much, is where the color is buried inside the color separation information. It is an extra layer of color separation. Also, you can only, for doing video, you can only have one, even though this calls it a QuickTime mask, you can only have, that's really an alpha channel, you can only have one of these, or the video system will probably freak out on it. It won't know which one to use. Now, hit save on that. Okay, now that you've heard me in only a few minutes describe an alpha channel, was that difficult to understand? Does that make sense to everybody? I see one vote yes. Okay. All right, any questions on that so far? Now, the reason why I'm starting with Photoshop and demonstrating this to you is for the very, very simple reason is this is what After Effects and other pieces of software are doing behind your back. Okay? They're making these alpha channels for you. If you think about it, this is the beginning of how we get into green screen work and stuff, because basically we tell the color green to become transparent. It's basically making one of these quick masks on the fly. Jenna, no, as I said earlier, you can basically use TIFF or you can use PSDs, although when I tried to open my PSD, it wasn't working. Although it may have been too zoomed in. Let's try that again. I'm going to do a file. Save as. As a PSD. Let's go. PSD. Yes, save it as alpha channel. Make that version 2. I'm intentionally changing the name of it just so I can tell them apart from the original. Okay, so we're going to go back in After Effects. File. Come on. Import file. Here's my 2. Now I missed the older version when they had a little thumbnail of it for you. Made my life a lot easier. Oh no, it's first. I want this footage. Thinks I have multiple layers. Nah, something screwed up on my system, of course. I did not think to test that before class started. But basically, TIFF is, like I said, TIFF is so old-fashioned, it can't fail on almost any piece of software. So it's just one of my go-to things when nothing else is working. But remember, it does not work with JPEGs, and also it is questionable whether it will work with a PNG. Let's give that a shot. Because notice when I go to PNG, it will not let me save that alpha channel. It does contain transparencies, but PNGs does weird things with transparencies and does not like the alpha channels at all. So basically, rule of thumb is try your Photoshop files first. If that doesn't like that, I'll have to track down what setting I've got set up wrong. Go with TIFF. It's always a good fallback. Okay. Now the other thing to keep in mind with this, my little giraffe, is if I were to make a text layer real fast, now you'll notice something very interesting, that I can see the transparency around those layers. Guess what After Effects is doing for me right here? It has made an alpha channel for me with this text, so only the text is visible. Isn't that nice of it? It does that sort of thing. So it becomes this very easy thing to deal with. Now we'll talk again down the road. I'm not going to spend the entire evening. Okay. The other thing I should have said at the beginning of the semester, class I should say, not beginning of the semester, class tonight is basically, we're going to be getting into a situation as we move forward is getting into more esoteric things. Okay, everything up to this point is the bare bones basic of knowing After Effects. Now we're going to be starting to get into things which you may or may not find useful depending upon which direction you're going. Whether you're going into 3D animation, motion graphics, etc., etc. So you're going to have to bear with me, and you may get into situations where, of course, I can't. You'll sit there and go, well, I probably won't use this, and I might say, yep, you're right. You might not want to use it because everybody is different. Okay, so any questions on the basic concept behind alpha channels? Like I said, this will come back again in a few more classes, and you'll see, so you'll see it in action. Okay, any questions? Oops. That's how I do that. Okay, I think everybody's happy with that. Briefly last week, I took this information and I showed you a very bizarre tool called the puppet tool. The puppet tool allows us to animate these things. So for example, I can take my, I can take my giraffe here and I can put a series of, I'm on the wrong layer, so that would work. Yeah, let's clean this up just a touch. So I would put a pin here, put a pin here, put a pin here, do his legs, backside, boom. With these pins, it allows me to bend and twist the pixels. It's basically a fancy distortion tool. Now, depending upon what version of After Effects you have, they have updated this since then. We also have a thing called the bend tool, which puts in this really neat little, which really gives me more finite controls. Now I'm intentionally doing a huge distortion here just to generate it. But with the puppet tool, the most basic thing I can do, going back to what we were talking about last week, is once I have the pins in, I can animate this. The simplest animation is with the control key, where if I select a thing, it automatically hits the play button, and it basically allows me to gently manipulate this. So we go back. Now I can have an unlimited number of these animations. And there it is way down there at the bottom. For example, if I wanted to do his legs, I could also do them separately. I know this is looking goofy, guys. Let's do the back legs too. But if you're ever doing any sort of character work, this is a handy little thing to do. Now, I'm again doing more broader animations than I would want to make it look realistic. Put it all together. And then finally, of course, you would then P for position at the beginning. That. Go to the end. And it becomes a silly little animation. Now, of course, like with everything else, I could speed this up, slow it down based on adding and removing keyframes. One method of doing this is, of course, to just go through to clean it up and take out a whole mess of keyframes to give less emotion. I've seen this effectively used in doing background characters. I know, just like branches moving in the background. Remember the house at night? Remember those big dark things? You could subtly move those branches and stuff for the rain and wind if you wanted to, and other things. So this is a really handy way. I've also seen it being used for lip movement and other things like that. There is no limit to the possibilities. But like I was describing last time in last week's class, is that alpha channel is critical for the puppet tool to really work. If I bring in the original file, which which is, of course, way too big. Whee! And try to do the same thing. Look what happens. Because the alpha channel removes the computer views those pixels around it as not there. It basically ignores and doesn't twist the rest of this, unlike this where it twists all the pixels around it. Now it's not. Now you might want to do something psychedelic and do something weird, like this kind of distortion. I don't know, but you can see the difference between the animation I was doing with the alpha channel versus the animation of trying to do it all the pixels touching each other. It does make a huge difference of what it looks like. And again, like last week, because there's an alpha channel automatically on text, I can make every one of these letters dance to its own rhythm. Whee! And do the same kind of animation. Now obviously if we were in class, I'd be having you guys all doing this, and we'd have dancing letters and dancing giraffes all over the place. It's a weird sort of thing to do. But the puppet tool, again, is just one of those bizarre little tools that's kind of buried. There's actually a few pages on it in the book. But it's not for this current version. Like I said, this current version has a lot more other little options. And this is not something I use very frequently myself, just honestly. Like I said, occasionally I'll use it for background stuff, but I don't do it for real animation. But you might want to use it in combination with other types of animation. Okay? Questions so far? I don't want to keep racing ahead, and I don't mean to do that. Sorry. Any thoughts, questions? If you need to, you can unmute yourself if you don't want to type in a question. Yeah, control is what you press to get the stopwatch. You can tell that you've done it when you're in the puppet tool. You can see the little stopwatch. See, there it is. That means that you can do animation. I think I was a little too kinetic with that motion on the but for fast and dirty stuff, it's really effective. And like I said, it's a very little thing. The reason why this all works, of course, is when you have the puppet tool selected, all this information shows up. And what it's really done is everything with the alpha channel is broken down into a grid, or what they call a mesh. Okay? And there's a certain amount of density and how much of a grid you want. The defaults work pretty good. Do be careful. Yeah, I went way over the amount. Come on, stop. Okay. Anyhow, you want to, if you increase this too much, you'll slow down your computer immensely. There's actually now recording options, which is a new thing, and stuff. Show the mesh, don't show the mesh. How much speed, because the thing is you can actually slow down how fast the timeline will move, so it'll give you a little bit more time to play with it, as opposed to real time. Oops. Or how fast you want to do that. Ooh, I don't think you want to do that. Get that. And it also gives the option of trying to smooth out your motion. Your mileage may vary. Okay. Alrighty. So this is our thing. Actually, the giraffe looks funny when we're on the mesh. There we go. You can see how much bigger of a mesh this sucker is right now, around how many connector tissues it has. Also, there's also a thing called the Starching Tools, which is designed to make sure areas do not bend. Remember I got into it, the thing originally, and showed that you just need more of these. Those starched areas are preventing this from moving, but I never get to do exactly what I want, because you'll notice that some of them do. So it might be handy other times, but I've never gotten it to really do exactly what I want. So that's not as useful as of a tool. Anyhow, the brand new thing that they just introduced in this version, by the way, is the thing called the Advanced tool, which is when you click a pin, you get a lot more control over that pin. The positioning, the scaling, and the rotation angles. So for example, not only can I use the rotation just as normal, too much of a distortion, but I now can play with the scaling of it, which would really be good for animating lips and things like this. And you can also get down to more finite control of the rotation. You know, many times as I try to do that rotation, you gotta hit the line, not the little box. I always forget that, because I think I'm doing Illustrator. I want to hit the little box. So that's the Advanced Puppet tool. Again, for general stuff, it's more time consuming, I think, but it's just something to know that's there. Okay. What do you guys think? So far, so good? Questions? The question that comes up for the video, of course, for later is it good to pre-compose if you want to add more elements? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. There's not a good hard answer on that one. You know, pre-composing, again, I tend to use it more for grouping of information than etc. So that's just one of those things to think about. You know, if you have a specific example, we can talk about that later. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk again about character animation, because some people are concerned about that. If you recall, months and months and months ago, I had this skeleton. It's a Photoshop file. And if you recall, if you just import a Photoshop file, it flattens the image. However, if you instead import it on its own, skeleton, and import it as not footage, but as a composition, no, yep, I want editable. The whole point of this is to do editable styles. Basically what it does when you import it as a composition, a Photoshop file, is it first makes a comp for you, and it puts all the layers individually into a little folder and puts them on a timeline. So when I double click on my skeleton here, voila, and there is all those wonderful layers from my Photoshop file. Now this composition is a little too narrow because that's the way Photoshop was set up. Now if you recall, of course, all I have to do is go into composition settings. I'm going to keep the locked aspect. I'm going to want this to be a lot wider. Pixels. So now I have a much wider composition. It's a custom size. And you can see that, yes indeed, they turn off the little eyeballs. that this has been broken down to lots of pieces here. By the way, I'm getting away from the puppet tool now. I'm shifting gears again. Now, if I want to, I'm going to lock all my layers except for my left arm. Now, my left arm is made up of 3 parts, which I, of course, have to unlock. So I've got my left arm, my upper arm, got my lower arm, got my hand. Now, starting with my upper left arm, if I hit position, not second, rotation, much more dramatic. If I rotate this, you'll notice that it doesn't rotate correctly. Why is that? Well, actually, I'm going to hide the transparency here. And the answer came up in the, because it's too deep. No, that's not the right answer, Jenna. The right answer was, in fact, the problem is the anchor point. Reset. Oops, which is a bad thing to hit, actually. Is the anchor point is actually in the center of the drawing. You know, unfortunately, the center of the drawing is his crotch, so you have to forgive me. Now I can move the anchor point, of course, by, oh, that's why. Because my anchor point actually is right there. Now I can move my anchor point with the numbers on my timeline, but if you recall correctly, way back in a few weeks ago, I showed you the pan behind tool. The pan behind tool allows me to move this anchor point anywhere I want. And the thing will rotate around where that anchor point is. If I'm animating character, though, I want to put the anchor point where the joint is. So for example, for this upper one, I actually want to put this on the shoulder. So when I rotate it now, there we go. I get a nice rotation that way. Now if I do the lower arm, same thing. I want to put that where his elbow would be. So when I rotate that, it rotates there. And if I do the hand as well, I want to put that in the wrist. And if I rotate that now, grab the wrong one, sorry. Okay, as a quick little review, if you recall correctly, if I wanted to connect this for animation purposes, I've got 3 points here. We have a thing called the parent-child relationship. The parent-child relationship allows me to connect these 3, so when I move one, it controls the other ones. But I don't want all 3 of these to basically work together. I want them to work more like a marionette. So when the upper one moves, the 2 lower one moves. When the middle one moves, I only want the hand to move, etc., etc. So for example, come on, deselect, there we go. I would sit here and go, okay, because these are my parent-child links. For the hand, I would say, I want you to, of course the hand, which is itself, can't link to itself, do the one above it, from the lower hand to the upper arm. Okay? Then from that one, I want the lower arm to connect to the upper arm. Now again, the power, and then I'm going to leave the upper arm blank for the moment. So if I hit rotation one more time, if I rotate just the upper arm, it is the grandparent. It's grabbing the parent and the child and making them move accordingly. If I were to rotate the lower arm, you can see the hand, because it's the parent to the hand, which is the child, it's moving separately. And then finally, because these are still independent objects, I can still rotate the hand and not impact. So it flows down, grandparent, parent, child, but it does not flow back up. This is a different way of animating than the puppet tool. This is a more basic way. This is what you wanted to know, huh? Okay. So basically, the steps are pretty simple. Down. Step 1 is to make sure that you have your anchor point in the correct position for each layer. Now you can do that by manually typing in the information, or you can just use the pan behind tool and move that. Remember, your anchor point is this weird crosshair son of a gun. You zoom in on that. That's what the anchor point looks like. And that's the pan behind tool symbol next to my pointer. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back up there where I want it. Now I'm going to break the parent-child relationship. So now these are all independent of each other. So if I were to rotate the upper portion, nothing else would happen, just it will rotate. Down below, I have to decide what order I need to have these strings linked together. I know I need to go from the hand to this one to that one. And I have two choices upon which to do this. I can use the drop-down menu, or, if you recall, I also have this bizarre thing called the pick whip. Yep, see, pick whip. I can grab this and say the left-hand one is going to be tied to the lower arm, and this one is going to be tied to the upper arm. It's the exact same thing as the drop-down menu. Now, even though the upper arm has no parent, it is the grandparent. It's the one that controls the other ones. So, for example, if I need to, I can just say I want to rotate the upper arm, have it swing up, have it swing up a little bit more, and I can have it swing back down. Let's just slide that all the way out that way, and that's all the way down. So now I sit there and go, okay, hit play. Yeah, parents affect the children, children do not affect the parents. That's a very good way of phrasing it, Terry. But again, because they're independent, I can still animate this. So for example, I'm going to skip over the middle arm and go straight to the hand. I can rotate this itself. I can just say, okay, I want it waving while it's doing this. Okay, wave this way, wave that way, wave this way. And for simplicity's sake, I'm going to select all these things. I'm just going to paste, paste, paste. And then I'm just going to... So he's got a wobbly hand. So even though you have a parent-child relationship, it does not mean that you cannot still animate the children. They just do their own thing. You know, in class I would actually have you guys trying to make this guy have do jumping jacks, just for the fun of it. But as you can see, it's a pretty powerful feature. It allows us, using the parent-child, to combine things and to create definite animations. When you are doing something with this many layers and stuff, I can't recommend enough to go ahead and start using the padlocks, because it's so easy to accidentally change one from the other. And by the way, yes, you can combine this. If I wanted to, I could actually put a puppet tool in on this, separate from the rest of it. Oh, remember my settings, sorry. I was fiddling with it. So now I can do like a distortion. That doesn't change the animation. And I could use that puppet tool to animate that, you know, if I really wanted to do something bizarre. Let's try doing something bizarre. See how it's noticing the animation back and forth. It's literally Mr. Rubber Band Man, right? It's one of the stupider things I've done myself, animating. But it gets the point across. You know, the real secret of After Effects is mixing all the elements together to give you the final thing that you're trying for. Now, a lot of the examples I do in this class are over the top, just mainly so you can actually see them on the screen and have it demonstrated, as opposed to the professionally done level. But this is a good way to start. This is where you can actually start playing with it, getting used to it. Spaghetti bones, I do like that analogy as well. It gives us a lot of possibilities and stuff. Okay. So those are some basic animation types. Clearly, if you're going to be doing character animation of any sort, you've got the traditional rotation position stuff, and if you make your life easier by setting up the parent-child relationships, you can do a lot of animation with very few keyframes. If you want to do something a little bit wilder, you can use the puppet tool distortion ability to get you, and you can use these at the same time. By the way, if I don't like that puppet tool, I go down to puppet tool and hit delete. There we go. I got rid of it. Being picky. And I'm back to normal. Okay, what do you guys think? Fun stuff? Interesting? Okay, whoops, stop it. Alrighty. Useful yet tedious. Actually, it describes After Effects to a T. The thing about After Effects, as I think I told you in the very first class, is actually not that difficult. But brother, is it time consuming. You know, it can take you hours to do things. If you can think of it, you can do it in After Effects. You just have to have the time and energy to put in to make it work. As we learn more and more. I wanted to know this before the Project 3 started. You know, the funny thing is, that complaint for all projects is you always, you know, have more information when you finish a project than when you start a project. Sorry about that, but that's just the nature of the class. And keep in mind, this is the beginning class. I'm just giving you the bare bones thing. And at the end of the semester, I still will not have, after 16 weeks, I will still not have covered everything After Effects does. I will have left a lot of things out just because it just isn't time. As you may have noticed, I'm already going at a breakneck pace just to cover the handful of things I do want to cover. And a lot of these are, you know, silly little things like this, but they can be very useful. You should be aware of them. Okay, I'm looking at the clock, and it is 7:45 right now. This is probably a good time for us to take our break before we shift gears again. Okay, we're going to cover a couple more things for the evening, one of which is I'm actually going to have, when we get back from the break, project number 4, because, of course, project number 3 was just started. Okay, and then we're going to do some more oddball things, and I will show you some really fun stuff. As a matter of fact, I will get into some things that you probably enjoy a lot. So I am going to stop the recording right now to stop this video file.